Hi, I'm Caden, and for the past 2 years I've been working on a game called Main Sequence. I started working on Main Sequence because I wanted to combine two of my favorite genres, automation games and space sims. I've played hundreds of hours of Factorio and Satisfactory, and I've always wanted to try making a survival factory building game myself. One of my favorite parts of survival games is when they have interesting vehicles, especially when the vehicles are more than just tools to get from one place to another. I'm thinking of the Cyclops in Subnautica or the rovers in Astroneer, where you can customize and build on them and turn them into a home away from home. If I was going to make a game, I definitely wanted vehicles to be a big part of it. And as far as vehicles go, spaceships are just about as cool as it gets. I knew when I started that I wanted to make a first-person game, and that it would be set exclusively in space. This is because I wanted to focus on the spaceships and space stations, and I didn't want to add the complexity of transitioning from space to ground or walking around on planets. The first thing I did was to create an outline of what I wanted the game to be. I knew that I wanted the main gameplay loop to follow the common formula for automation games, where you mine resources and build machines in order to automate production. The question I faced was how to integrate that with the space sim gameplay in a way that felt unique and authentic. What I decided was that the player would build their factories and machines on board the stations, and then use ships to mine and transport goods between different stations. By building shipyards on your stations, you could expand your fleet and scale up your production. At this point, I was considering calling the game Shipyard Simulator, given how central this was to the gameplay loop. My original idea was to have 5 tiers of ships and stations that you would progress through by completing research. Each tier would be a big upgrade from the last, and have a building cost that reflected that, giving you a reason to continue to expand your factories. I really wanted to include some truly massive ships in the game, similar in scale to a Star Destroyer or the Enterprise, and I wanted these ships to have fully modeled and explorable interiors. Some of the original concepts for the final tiers of ships were more than 1 kilometer in length. I stuck with this idea of tiered ships for a long time, and I even implemented one of the medium-sized ships, a 150-meter cruiser, in the game. Eventually though, I decided to rework the idea, because after playtesting it more, I found that it wasn't actually very fun. The problem was that when the ships and stations were so expensive, the time between collecting resources and building was so long that the two actions didn't feel connected, and it wasn't rewarding. It made it hard to incrementally upgrade your ships and stations, and it also limited your creativity since there just wasn't very much building to do. It took a lot of brainstorming to solve this, because I was quite attached to the old system. I eventually decided to rework the stations to be made of much smaller 16-meter modules, and I also changed the ships so they use the same modular building system. By giving players more creative freedom to customize their ships and stations, the whole gameplay loop became more rewarding. It became not just about collecting enough items, but about the process of experimenting and refining your designs to make the perfect ship or station. Being able to modify the ships completely changed the feeling of the game, much more than I thought it would, and now it's one of my favorite features. Given the many months of experimenting and prototyping this took, I guess the takeaway is to not be afraid of making big changes when things aren't working. You might be thinking that this is a lot of progress for a first devlog video. It's something I've thought myself, especially as taking this long to share my progress goes against one of the most common pieces of advice for indie devs, which is to share your work early and often. Unfortunately, one of the most common pitfalls for indie devs is to get overwhelmed balancing the work of development with creating content for YouTube. This isn't my first attempt at starting a devlog series, but all of the previous times I've written scripts and recorded some gameplay footage, it just hasn't felt right and I never completed those videos. The reason is because of what is to me the best and worst part of indie game development, that you have to do everything yourself, but also that you get to do everything yourself. When you develop an indie game, you're not just the programmer or artist, you're also the artistic director, the CEO, the sound designer, the marketing team, the list goes on and on. Of course, You can and should seek out other people to work with who have experience in these roles when possible, but ultimately, you are the person who needs to take the lead in all of these areas if you want your game to succeed. I've been programming and making small games since I was a kid, which definitely helped me when starting out, but I still had a lot to learn about programming and art and all of the many other skills needed to make a game. So really, it's not so much that I've spent 2 years making this game, so much as I've spent 2 years learning how to make games. And that's why it's also my favorite part of indie game development. I love learning new things, whether that's new tools like Blender for modeling, or Inkscape for the UI, or Reaper for music production. And I love learning how games are made, listening to the experiences of other developers and teams, and learning as much as I can about the tricks of the trade. All that brings me back to the current state of development, and the future roadmap for main sequence. I'm very happy with the foundation of the game, and right now I'm working on polishing it and creating more content for the existing gameplay systems. Adding new modules for the ships and stations is much faster than writing thousands of lines of networking code, and so the pace of development should pick up going forwards. While there's still some rough patches and the occasional crash, the game is fully playable up to the first tier of technology, and there's an ongoing playtest that you can join from the Steam page. I'm excited to get your feedback on the current version of the game, and to listen to what features you find the most fun and engaging, so I can expand on those as I work towards the game's early access release. Using the feedback from the current playtest, my plan is to release a more polished demo version later this fall. From there, I'll continue to refine and expand the game, and if all goes according to plan, then main sequence will launch into early access sometime next spring. Going forwards, I'll be posting more regular updates about the game. While I summarize the journey of developing main sequence so far, there's been a lot more ups and downs and lessons learned over the course of 2 years that I just didn't have the time to cover. So if that's something you'd be interested in hearing more about in the future, then let me know in the comments below. If all this looks interesting to you, make sure to wishlist main sequence on Steam to get notified when the demo drops. You can also check out our Discord, where you can get access to the ongoing playtest, as well as see some of the things that people are already building in-game. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.